Hello everyone, I'm very glad that you listened to my story. Please give me a follow and like the video if you enjoyed it. Feel free to comment and provide feedback so I can improve the sound quality. Yes, I will now continue the unfinished story. Chapter 31 Intermission 6. Obtained EXP, 1,500, Game Coins, 5,000. Obtained Equipment, Eye of Hostility, M1911A1 Pistol, Chef's Knife, Baseball Bat, Flashlight X2. Completed and accepted quests, 5/5. Reward for achieving special ending, The Blessing of the Ruler of Time. Completed special or hidden quests, 0, unlocked world building, The Circle of Time. Time of terror points increase, 0, highest terror points, 0%. Average terror points, 0%. Obtained skill points, 300. Additional rewards from good terror rating, EXP, 3,000, game coins, 30,000. Scenario cleared reward, 80% increase to base EXP, 1,200. As the batteries inside the flashlight and the bullets inside the pistol were consumables below excellent quality, they would not take up space when equipped inside their corresponding item or placed inside the backpack. The wrench was not obtained during this scenario, so it was not counted. Thus, such items did not appear in the rating review. The reward for mastering the world-building sure is something else, Feng Bujue uttered internally. Not counting the 240 skill points, I would originally only have gained 60 skill points from the scenario. Brother Ju. We are rich. Wang Tanji exclaimed joyfully in the team chat. I rose directly to level 10. And got around 20,000 game coins. When Feng Bujue heard that, he instinctually calculated that Xiao Tan had gained around 60 to 150 skill points from the scenario. He replied, there's no need to shout. I can see that just fine from the team member list. He noticed the friend request from Long Almin. As he pressed the accept button, he said, don't forget to accept the friend request from Brother Long. I've already accepted it, Wang Tanji replied. You should ask him to join our group. After some simple process, Long Almin's voice also appeared in the team chat. Hey, both of your levels basically doubled. Brother Feng, you're level 11 now. Currently, his level was the same as Feng Bujue's. How could that be? To find the answer, peruse Feng Bujue's current character status. IGN, Feng Bujue, level 11, EXP, 1, 350 11, 000. Skill points, 430, game coins, 51,500. Mastery, general ability F, workmanship F, sleuthing F, fighting F, marksmanship F, inventory 8/10, Mario's wrench, Eye of Hostility, Chef's Knife, Baseball Bat, Flashlight X2, M1911A1 Pistol. Login Lobby 1/30, Puzzle Card, Monkey. Leveling up from 11 to 12 required 11,000, not 1,100. Every 10 levels, Thriller Paradise's leveling system would undergo a drastic change. Going from level 1 to 2 required 100, then from 2 to 3 required 200, finally from 10 to 11 required 1,000. Then, after players reached level 11, they would see a shocking change. Other than the 1,500 EXP and 1,200 game coins reward, he also gained over 170 skill points. With the additional reward, he had earned around 4,500 EXP. But when he examined his level bar, he was shocked to realize that he needed another 8,000 EXP before he could reach level 12. The two communicated for a while and then explained to Wang Tanji what would happen after he reached level 11. In the end, it was Long Almin who was the first to remember this detail and asked, by the way, what are your titles? Cold-blooded skullcracker, Feng Bujue answered. The other two were speechless, causing a temporary silence. Several seconds later, Wang Tanji chuckled dryly and said, "It looks like this system is quite logical. After all, during the scenario, most of your attacks landed on the head, and you do appear quite cold-blooded. Then what about your title?" The wailing young master. Feng Bujue shot back. How could there possibly be a young master title in the game? You're right. Young master is a type of person, not a career, Feng Bujue replied. My title is the panicked hidden assailant. Wang Tanji was not going down that rabbit hole with Feng Bujue, so he quickly tossed out his title. That is due to the panicked reaction, and the battle style of refusing to face the enemy head-on, Feng Bujue said. Well, I can't say the system is wrong. The system is definitely wrong. How can it give me a title like that? It'll make other players look down on me, I'm sure of it. Wang Tanji complained. What difference does it make? Other players will look down on you when they see your title, or after they hear your helpless, high-pitched scream. Feng Bujue did not hold back. Ha ha ha. Long Aomin laughed and tried to be the mediator. Actually, Brother Wang, you don't need to worry so much. The title might change after completing each scenario. For example, my title has changed to Team Defender. The three chatted for a while. Long Aomin said that he planned to go offline to rest for a few hours, because he had been online for quite some time already. When it was dawn, he would return in sleeping mode. Wang Tanji claimed that he was tired for the day already, and would not continue the game until tomorrow. Including the beginner's tutorial, he had just completed 4 consecutive scenarios. That was his limit. Feng Bujue also said that he would go offline after getting the reward. It was not that he was tired, he was consciously monitoring his level. The maximum level for the closed beta was 20. For non-professional players, there was no need to rush it. When more than 10% of players reached that level, the closed beta would end, and the server would be closed until the game was upgraded and ready for the open beta. Thriller Paradise had already attracted the attention of many game studios. As previously mentioned, during the afternoon on the first day of the closed beta, Feng Bujue could already find guides written by top players on the forums. It was clear that most of these guides and articles came from workers at gaming studios. These people were professionals, and they had a clear plan when playing games. After all, it was work for them. For this kind of game, they had to have 2 shifts. One worked in sleep mode starting from 8 a.m., while the other fought in non-sleep mode in the afternoon, and the shift changed again at night. Based on the law that was passed in the year 2055, the connection time players had to a gaming hub was severely limited. The maximum hours in real-life one could be connected to non-sleeping mode was 10 hours. Due to the 1:10 ratio of time conversion for sleep mode, the connectivity period could not be longer than 8 hours in real life, but the recommended time was actually less than 4 hours. If someone reached the maximum threshold for those 2 modes within a day, they would be forcibly kicked out of the game, and would need to wait 24 hours before they could reconnect. In other words, a person could play up to 18 hours on a psychologically connected game in a day, 10 hours of it in non-sleep mode and the other 8 in sleep mode. That was the maximum. Changing the gaming hub would not cheat the system, because the server would not accept the citizen's ID again. This was the law, and it was to consider the general health of the players. At the initial stage of such games, there were people who stayed connected when they were on the toilet, and most of them died from exhaustion, or suffered permanent brain damage. Of course, this was not the fault of the gaming hub or the game. In the previous century, when the 4th-generation photon computer first came to the world, there were many who had died at the internet cafe, so who could be blamed? After bidding farewell to each other, Xiao Tan and Brother Long ended the communication and cancelled the group. Feng Bujue walked out of the elevator and entered the space to collect his items. There was still 2 glass tubes in the room. Inside the tube on the left, something was already floating within. That appeared to be the item given by the ruler of time. If they did not get the ending that they did, this reward would not have been there. Feng Bujue first removed one of the flashlights from his backpack and stored it at the login lobby, dropping his inventory number down to 7/10. Then, he glanced at the special power that his title awarded him. This power was placed above the skill bar, so it did not take up a space. Skill name, brain concussion. Skill type, passive. Effect, blunt force trauma to a target's skull has a 20% chance of stunning the target. Remark, go ahead and crack the skull. Add more grease behind the shoulder. After all, it's only a head. The effect of this title was not bad. After all, it was passive and would not consume stamina points. It should be highly effective against common monsters combined with the effect of Mario's wrench, but when facing strong monsters, non-humanoid monsters, or shapeless monsters, Feng Bujue probably would not have the chance to aim at people's head. Feng Bujue soon walked to the first glass tube, floating inside a small glass bottle half filled with sand. Item name, slowing sand. Item, consumable. Effect, breaking the container will cause the speed of all the monsters within 100 meters radius to slow by a factor of 10. Effect lasts for a minute. Remark, there is some low-quality time dust inside this bottle. When you're surrounded by a large group of monsters, it might help you escape. This is a very tactical and valuable consumable. Xiao Tan and Brother Long should have a bottle each, Feng Bujue muttered as he walked to the second tube. Please select your additional reward. 1. A randomized piece of equipment that matches your level. 2. 50,000 game coins, maximum limit. 3. 400 EXP. The value of a good terror rating showed itself when one was level 11. From the reward, the game coins, and equipment aside, the fact that the system was willing to award 40% of the EXP level up requirement was a bit much. Theoretically speaking, as long as Feng Bujue was not cured, no matter which level he was, by surviving 2 scenarios, he would basically gain a level up. But precisely because of that, Feng Bujue did not choose the EXP. He was worried that his curious terror points would attract the game company's attention, making them suspect that he was using some kind of cheat. Therefore, he wanted to stay as low a profile as he could. After all, he was not attempting to rush his level. Therefore, he chose equipment again. Even though he was not lacking weapons, with both close-ranged and long-ranged weapons, he lacked armor, so he hoped to win some trusty armor. Chapter 32 Intermission 7. After making his choice, the white light coagulated in the tube to form a pair of sneakers that looked like they had gone out of fashion centuries ago. Item name, jazz shoes. Defense points, slightly weak. Special effect, increase running speed and greatly lower the stamina points consumption when walking or running for a long time. Remark, this pair of sneakers belonged to the best striker the world has ever seen. He was the first European football superstar, famed for his tricks. In his 30-or-so-year career, he was never given a red or yellow card. A different athlete known as the King of Football remarked, he was someone who taught us how to play football. This is not bad, and there's no equip requirement, Feng Bujue said. Even if I get better foot armor in the future, this should sell for a fair price. He directly equipped the sneakers and heard the system audio say, when the equipment comes with cosmetic choices, players can choose their preferred equipment appearance from the menu. Feng Bujue examined the function closer. Basically, the player was given the choice to select what the sneakers looked like, either the default appearance or the equipment's appearance. After the trading post was open, There would be more cosmetic choices on sale. At that time, there would be players who spent obscene amounts of money on cosmetics. But during the closed beta period, when the trading post was still unavailable, more people would choose to select to show their equipment as they were. Actually, this was another manifestation of pride. People liked to show off things that other people did not have and gain satisfaction from the envious looks. After arranging everything, Feng Bujue disconnected from the system. Upon exiting the gaming hub, he found that 2 hours had passed in real life. By then, night had fallen, and the wind was howling outside his window. The night sky was starless, but of course, Feng Bujue was not one to admire the stars. Young people in the city rarely went to sleep before midnight, regardless of whether they needed to wake up early the next day or not. They would rather take a quick nap on the cramped public transport than sacrifice the time that belonged to them after work. Feng Bujue was a quintessential night owl. He woke up at noon and would normally go to bed at 4 a.m. He told himself the period of twilight was when his writing inspiration struck. But that night, even though there was still 2 more hours to midnight, Feng Bujue suddenly felt like writing. He brewed a pot of coffee, sat before the computer, and started to type. His pen name was Bujue, and he was writing a serial called The Hapless Detective and His Cat for a magazine. Actually, he wanted to write about a good detective, but in his day and age, for something to sell, there had to be a hook, just like how comics often needed gratuitous images of girls to sell. The same rule applied to the novel market. No matter which year it was, human curiosity and lasciviousness was never going to change. When Feng Bujue was really poor, he did consider writing some harem-themed novel. As someone who referred to himself as an artist, it was easy for the man to find someone he identified with from history. For example, there was Millet, a French painter who, due to the hardship of life, once traded his painting for shoes and his oil paintings for a bed. To follow the interest of his patron, he also painted some saucy works. There was also Titian. Well, this one was more of an interest that Feng Bujue had in him. In any case, Feng Bujue eventually compromised by adding some hook in his work, because that was the only way he could continue to write the topic that he liked and was good at, which was detective stories. The setting of The Hapless Detective and His Cat merely split the original character he had into 2. Originally, the main character should have been a clear fellow, but now, he turned into a kind yet hopelessly dull detective until he one day discovered that his house cat could speak, and only he could understand it. The cat also made an exceptional detective. The magazine's editor even praised Feng Bujue for it, saying how ingenious his setting was. The interaction between the main character and the cat could provide the comic relief to the heavier subjects in a detective novel. Feng Bujue also slowly saw the benefits to this style. 1. It could help him pace the story better, and 2. It could help him fill up the word count. Other than this serial, Feng Bujue had another long novel, the one that was mentioned before, the published novel that could bring him some money. He had gotten writer's block and had not written a word for a month, but that day, Feng Bujue was suddenly inspired. He continued writing the story called The Twin Nightmare. Feng Bujue worked through the night, and saved his draft when dawn came. He stood up from the table and stretched lazily. He yawned and looked at the time. It was 4:40 a.m. Feng Bujue only then remembered that it had been tomb sweeping day the day before. He supposed there was a reason Thriller Paradise chose to have its closed beta on that day. It was to add some scary atmosphere to its release. Since the sun was rising, the breakfast stalls nearby should be open. Feng Bujue's mind was still filled with various plots, and he did not feel tired at all. He decided to grab something to eat before going to bed. He grabbed his key and some change. The man only has spare change left, and went downstairs. 15 minutes later, he returned with some biscuits and fried fritters. When he returned to the residential area, he saw that some of the elders had already filed out for their morning exercise, or were lining up at the residential clinic. Feng Bujue rarely interacted with his neighbors. Normally, at that hour, he would be sleeping. For the man, a day started at noon. Meow. A cat with black and white stripes called after him as he passed by it. Feng Bujue stopped and looked at the cat to confirm. Yes, its eyes were locked on his breakfast. Hey there. Feng Bujue squatted down next to the cat. He looked at the lack of a collar around the wild cat's neck. You sure you can eat fried dough? Meow. The cat was not afraid of strangers, and it seemed to be answering, yes. I've been living on soup noodles for the past few days. As Feng Bujue said that, he peeled off a piece of the fritter and placed it next to the cat's mouth. This is the only filling thing I can afford with my last few coins. The cat leaned forward to sniff the offering and swallowed it up. It licked its lips and then meowed again, as if saying one bite was not enough. Feng Bujue peeled off another piece and offered it to the cat. You really don't look cute at all. You're not any famous breed, yet you dare demand food from strangers and are hard to satisfy. Even though he mocked the cat, he still continued to peel pieces off his breakfast and feed them to the cat. If you're that hungry, go and search through the trash like a normal cat. Speaking of trash, Feng Bujue turned involuntarily to look at the trash cans placed before their apartment building. The cans were tall, about 1.4 meters tall, and they were shaped in a way where the upper part was wide and the bottom thin. If the cat jumped into it to look for food, then it had to wait until the can was almost full, or else there was a chance that it might get stuck inside and could not climb out. If it was tossed away alongside the trash by the trash collector, it would definitely become a dead cat. Feng Bujue sighed. He then broke the meal in half and placed it on his palm before offering it to the cat. Actually, life is not easy for you strays, isn't it? I hear during winter, a stray was hiding under a car to get close to the residual heat. In the morning, the owner started the car, and not knowing about the cat, he ran over it. He rubbed the cat's head. Sometimes, he was more willing to converse with cats than human beings. Strays have an average lifespan of 3 years, and I might die at any moment due to my unknown illness. I suppose it's destiny for us to meet today. After tossing the other half of the fritter into his mouth, he spoke through the mouthful of food. For us to share a meal. Perhaps, in our next lives, we'll be reborn as brothers. Xiaofeng, is that you? A familiar voice came from behind him. Feng Bujue turned to look. It was his landlady. Her name was Liu, and she was 5 years into retirement. Her husband was he, and he was also a retiree. Even though Madame Liu could get harsh with her words, she was a good person at her core. Madame Liu lived in the same building as Feng Bujue. She had 3 apartments to her name. One was on the other side of the residential area, and that had been rented as well. The other 2 apartments were in Feng Bujue's building. Madame Liu thought that it was bad luck to live on the 13th floor, so she lived on the 8th floor, and rented the other apartment to Feng Bujue. It really is you, and I thought it was someone else. Madame Liu carried a vegetable basket in her arms, apparently returning from the market. Has the sun risen from the western side today? You're up so early this morning. She moved her gaze to the cat and changed the subject. Xiaofeng, it's not that I want to lecture, but how can you feed a stray? Once you start, it'll come back tomorrow with its other friends. You're just creating trouble for the other neighbors, don't you think? You have a point. Feng Bujue thought about it and said, looks like there is only one solution. Holding his breakfast in one hand, he picked up the dirty stray with the other. I'll take it home to keep as pet. You sure know how to make your own decision. Madame Liu was startled. Did you ask for my thoughts? Well, our area allows the tenant to rear dogs, and this cat is not going to leave the home. Feng Bujue flashed a smile and tried to rely on his cuteness. You really want to keep it? Madame Liu thought that Feng Bujue was just joking. Suddenly, her expression shifted slightly as she studied Feng Bujue's face and then the cat's. Now that you mention it, you two do look similar. Then her gaze wandered lower. And the cat is also male. Feng Bujue's lips twitched. Auntie, can you not place a human and a cat in the same category? We are not even from the same species. Well, what do I know? You're the one with the college degree, not me, Madame Liu said. Anyway, let's be clear. I'll allow you to keep the cat, but your place is already like a pigsty. So, if you really want to keep it, you have to keep the place clean. We have a lot of elderlies in this building. If anyone comes to me with a complaint that there's a smell coming from your place, then I'll cook it. Feng Bujue finished her sentence. Meow. The cat seemed to understand that and growled with dissatisfaction in his arm. Cook your head. I'll cook you before I cook it. Madame Liu then dragged the man with her. Come on. Where are we going? Feng Bujue asked. To the pet clinic to give it a shot, Madame Liu said. What if it carries some disease? Feng Bujue hesitated. It's like this, life has been a bit hard recently. When is life not hard for you? Madame Liu cut him off. I'll pay for it, and you can repay me when you pay your rental. She continued moving but suddenly stopped. Look at me, I forgot all about it. Let me go up and drop off this basket first. When Feng Bujue returned home, it was already 7 a.m. He not only came back with a cat, but also a litter box, cat food, a plastic bowl, and toys. You know what? Next life, we really shouldn't be brothers. Feng Bujue held the cat at eye level. You should be reborn as a woman and repay me with your body. Meow. The cat yawned lazily, and it looked like it was tossing Feng Bujue a condescending gaze. As Feng Bujue picked up his stuff, he pressed the phone recorder. The system said, "You have one new message." The robotic voice stopped, and after a beep, Wang Tanji's voice said, "Brother Ju, why aren't you answering your phone? It's a holiday today, so I'll come to your place this afternoon with some food. After all, where else can you be? So, that's that." The cat jumped onto the table and scratched the phone button. It sniffed it and then jumped onto the sofa to lie down after losing interest. Why does he make it sound like I have nothing else better to do than sleep at home? Feng Bujue grumbled to himself, but then again, that was the truth. Chapter 33 Intermission 8. At 2 p.m., the intercom rang. After Feng Bujue was woken up, he only felt annoyed and blurry. Even though the pet clinic had bathed the cat in the morning, he had to prepare stuff for around half an hour before he got the chance to rest. Feng Bujue did not even change and collapsed directly into his bed. Only 6 hours had passed since then. He teetered to the door and picked up the intercom receiver. Who is it? It's me, Wang Tanji answered. And I have Master Bao with me. Feng Bujue pressed the open key and asked through a yawn, "Is the door open now?" "Yes, it's open now. I'll talk to you in a minute." 1 minute later, the pair went up the elevator. They walked down the corridor and pressed the bell to Feng Bujue's room. The latter glanced through the peephole before opening the door. He did not greet his guests and strode back into his room. Wang Tanji and Master Bao were not offended. They walked into the room and closed the door behind them. They placed the pizza and the box of beer on the table, and walked into Feng Bujue's kitchen to retrieve the plate and chopsticks. Huh? Brother Ju, why is there a kitten here? Wang Tanji soon discovered the kitten, which was asleep at the corner of the couch. Didn't you see the litter box in the corner? It's my cat, obviously. Feng Bujue twisted the bottle of beer open while flickering his eyes open. Like gargling water, he tossed the beer into his mouth before swallowing it. When did you get another pet? Wang Tanji asked as he slunk toward the kitten. This morning. Feng Bujue burped. Don't think it's really sleeping. Cats are very sensitive and alert animal. It may look like it is asleep for 10 hours a day, but actually, if there's any motion around them, their ears will twitch, which means Xiao Tan was about to lunge forward to grab the kitten, when the latter suddenly opened its eyes. It leaped away and turned to hide behind the couch. Due to the imbalance, Xiao Tan collapsed forward onto the couch. Why did you suddenly decide to get a pet again? Master Bao came from the kitchen with plates and paper napkins. He waved and hurried Xiao Tan to take his seat before he took his. His name was Bao Qing, and he was only 2 months older than them. All 3 of them had been classmates since kindergarten through to secondary school. Bao Qing had always been nicknamed Master Bao I since primary school, but the problem was, there was no judge in his family, and the man always shied away from any work that required responsibility. Who would have thought Master Bao would be the first to become an adult? He was 25, worked as a public servant, and had a 2-year-old daughter. His life was much more stable than the 2 single men. The biggest distinguishing feature about Master Bao was his perpetual frown. After marriage, the frown had only gotten deeper. I guess you can say it was destiny between me and that cat, Feng Bujue answered. The 2 used the terms another and again in their questions, because they knew that Feng Bujue had adopted a pet cat when he was young. At the time, the old lady next door had kept a female cat, and it had given birth to 4 kittens. She had given one to Feng Bujue. He had cared for it for 13 years until the kitty became an old cat. In the end, it died in its sleep. The child that reared it had become an adult, and he had personally given his pet a burial. Have you given it a name? Wang Tanji asked excitedly. Art has, Feng Bujue replied calmly, like the name was not a random one that he had just thought of, but one that had been in his mind for a long time. Phut. Master Bao was the first to spit out the beer. Even if you don't want Xiao Tan to annoy you with names, at least find a normal name, like Michael or Kitty. Feng Bujue snapped his fingers. Art has. The kitten turned its head around to meow. See, even it likes it. Feng Bujue pointed at Arthur's cat face. Wait, I want to take a video of it. Xiao Tan took out his phone. Wait a minute. Feng Bujue put down the bottle and went to open the curtain. Then he ran to pick up Arthur's, who did not have a chance to escape. Feng Bujue placed his hands under the cat's front legs and picked the kitten up. He faced the cat away from himself and extended his arms. He lifted the cat against the light like the scene in The Lion King, but recited a line that had nothing to do with the movie. My son. The day you were born, the very forests of Lordaeron whispered the name Arthas, Feng Bujue announced in a severe tone. Wang Tanji aimed the camera at the kitten, which looked so confused, and walked around them to finish the video. What the hell are you 2 up to? How old are you now? After being scolded by Master Bao, the 2 returned to their seats. Art has jumped away and went back to its nap. By the way, how come you are so free this weekend, Master Bao? Feng Bujue asked. The wife took the daughter back to visit her grandmother. Master Bao took a sip of the beer. Permanently or temporarily? Feng Bujue asked again. Master Bao almost choked on the beer. Why would you say that? How could it be permanent? My mother-in-law just wanted to see her granddaughter. Well, it's because you looked so happy today, Feng Bujue grumbled. Wang Tanji interrupted them. He picked up the remote to ask, what is this week's theme? A marathon of horrible flicks, Feng Bujue answered. Huh? Wang Tanji turned his face around. You heard me. We discussed this last time. Many infamous movies have been proven through the passage of time that they are the worst the movie industry has to offer, but we've not seen many of them. Fine. I'll go take a look. Wang Tanji looked through the list using the remote. Whenever the three of them had a chance together, they would pick a theme and watch movies with said theme for more than 10 hours. Most of the movies were from early 20th to 21st century. After that, due to the improvement in movie-making technology, the chance of bad movies drastically decreased. In the future, no matter how bad the movies were, at least they could be salvaged via special effects. How about Ghost Rider? Wang Tanji asked. Have you heard of Daredevil? Feng Bujue asked back. I think so. Same director. Okay then. Wang Tanji continued his search. How about this? Twilight, Breaking Dawn Part 2. My God, there are 7 movies to this series. They shot another 2 movies to add to the series pre-2055. Haven't seen any of them. Master Bao shrugged. I remember the movie won 7 of the 10 Golden Raspberry Awards the year it was nominated. 20 years later, it was named as one of the 3 worst movies produced in the 21st century, Feng Bujue said. I'm curious what the other 2 movies are. Don't tell me they are from the same series, Master Bao said. No, they are Battlefield Earth and Jack and Jill. The latter swiped all the awards at the Golden Raspberry Awards in 2012, Feng Bujue explained. Although I've only heard of their names, I haven't really seen the movies before. How about we watch these 3 movies today? I don't mind. Xiao Tan and Master Bao answered at the same time. 2 hours later. Are you two okay? Master Bao looked at the credits that were rolling on screen. Wang Tanji looked at the ground with a pout. I feel like I've lost something important. Feng Bujue looked out the window with a blank expression. That was the most humiliating 2 hours of my life. I feel like my brain has been assaulted. We still have a sci-fi and a comedy. How about we watch the comedy first? There was a serious look on Master Bao's sad face. 90 minutes later. Who would have thought that Adam Sandler would end up in this state? Wang Tanji sighed. There is not much to say about the acting, but the script. Master Bao, Feng Bujue asked, what do you think? There was no answer. Master Bao. Bao. Feng Bujue turned and saw Master Bao asleep with his eyes open. He was even snoring lightly. This horrible man. At around 7 p.m., the trio went to get some grilled meat at the roadside stall. Brother Ju and Xiao Tan clued Master Bao in on Thriller Paradise, but the latter was not interested. A man with a family had other things to take care of than game all day. The 3 chatted for a couple of hours before dispersing. At 9 p.m., Feng Bujue and Wang Tanji promised to play a few scenarios around midnight. The friendship between the 3 was real and not easy. They had grown up together as a group of kids with snotty noses. This kind of friendship was the purest. Even when they were 60, looking back, the friendship would not have changed. He did not sleep much in the morning, and considering that he had to play the game, Feng Bujue leaned into the gaming hub around midnight. After scanning, he chose sleep mode and decided the connectivity period. Connecting to sleep mode, adjusting. Adjustment completed. Please select time to log into the game, or return to the main menu. Setting complete. The program will initiate at 1 a.m., June 4, 2055. Good night. With the system audio in his ears, Feng Bujue closed his eyes. The gaming hub was very comfortable, and he quickly fell asleep with the alcohol in his system. When he recovered his consciousness, he was already standing inside that familiar elevator. The screen showed the time in real life, June 4, 1 a.m., but the clock did not show the seconds. Feng Bujue studied the clock. And several minutes later, the time did not change to 1:01 a.m. It was clear that he was in sleep mode. Wang Tanji's group request came soon after. After joining the team, Feng Bujue realized that Long Aomin was already in the group. Xiao Tan had noticed that the man had the free status, so he had also invited him to join. Brother Ju, have you heard the news? Wang Tanji soon said. Someone already reached level 20. Feng Bujue answered. Eh? How did you find out? I am guessing from your tone. Ha ha. Brother Feng, you sure are a master detective, Long Aomin said. Just after midnight in real life, the first level 20 player in our server was born. Feng Bujue looked at the team list. Only one day had passed, but Long Aomin was already level 13, and Xiao Tan had reached level 11. Feng Bujue believed that Xiao Tan had finished a solo mode in the 10 minutes before he came online. Is there an announcement whenever a player reaches the maximum level? Feng Bujue asked. Yes, all the players in the login lobby will hear the system announcement, and a news flash will appear on the touch screen. Furthermore, the forums have been exploding with the news, Long Aomin answered. Let me go take a look. Feng Bujue opened the forums and the thread pinned by the official party. The title read, Congratulations to player, fearless champion from the Regulation Studio for being the first player to reach maximum level during closed beta. One Lord Bao or Judge Bao is a fictional nickname of Bao Zheng, Bo ZHNG 999-1062, a Northern Song official renowned for his honesty. Chapter 34 The Mountain Pool and the Haunted Mansion 1. They even showed the name of the studio. Looks like Dream Incorporated is not against the participation of professional teams and players, Feng Bujue observed. But this is not good news for players like us who don't have an organization to support us, Long Aomin said. If Dream Incorporated doesn't put a limitation on these gaming studios, the top layer of the player base will be dominated by a handful of players. They can manipulate the entire market through their internal negotiation, or even collect high-end information and resource within themselves. Or perhaps, Feng Bujue said, Dream Incorporated thinks that the balance of Thriller Paradise is flawless, and the profit avenue for studios is already heavily limited by the system, and the presumptions that you have made are impossible to happen due to technical difficulties. Of course, these are not things that should concern us, and we can't do anything about it even if we want to. By the way, Brother Long, if you don't mind me asking, are you a professional player? Haha, I don't mind that question of course. A professional player is not something that needs to be hidden, right? Long Aomin laughed. I am quite impressed by professional players, but I am not one. I am just someone who likes gaming. Long Aomin was telling the truth. He was a police officer in real life, and his name was Long Li Wen. Even though there was the character Wen which represented written words in his name, he was a brave and some would say reckless officer. Actually, he had been just a few steps away from being transferred to Special Ops. Unfortunately, tragedy had struck. During one of his cases, he had been injured quite seriously. Long story short, after that, his knees had experienced some problems, so he could only spend most of his time sitting in the police station. Even though it did not detract from his everyday life, It dashed his hope of ever returning to the front line. "Oh, is that so?" Feng Bujue said. "And I thought you were a professional player, who liked to solo stuff." "Ha ha. Actually, I don't normally spend much time online. For the past 2 days, the wife has been tomb sweeping with her mother and visiting relatives. Meanwhile, I've had some time off from work, so I've been online. More than usual, but tomorrow, I'll need to return to." He hesitated but decided not to finish the sentence with the police station, and instead, it became, the unit, and I might not have time to play. "Then, we'd better get going and try to finish at least 2 or 3 team survival modes tonight," the excited Wang Tanji said. "All right, start the queue," Feng Bujue replied. "I'm ready," Long Almin added. Xiao Tan answered affirmatively, and then came the system audio. Since Feng Bujue was not the team leader this time, the audio that he heard was slightly different. Namely, the first part was cut. Confirming. The team size has been randomized, a team of 6. Adjusting nerve connectivity. Generating the scenario. Please wait for a moment. Downloading. Welcome to Thriller Paradise. This time, it sounded like a person with a split personality was talking because halfway through the sentence, the voice changed into a different one. Download complete. You are currently playing Team Survival Mode, Normal. A scenario introduction is provided in this mode, and there is a chance to trigger a side or hidden mission and unlock world building. Reward for clearing the scenario, a randomized learnable skill card. The opening CG this time began in a forest, and the scene started to move forward slowly in first person. The narrator said, "One fall night, you and a few other teammates whom you have just met in a tourist group lost your way in the mountain. Hunger and thirst followed your every step, as you skipped through the dying forest. Like a miracle, you happened upon a house in the forest. The scene changed to show a large, ancient home. The clouds in the sky hung low to the ground, covering this eerie home. There was a pond next to the house, and the walls next to the water had 2 windows like the house had grown. A pair of hollow eyes that were watching its own unidentifiable reflection in the water. The scent of despair wafted out from the house, rising up from the dead trees, the grey walls, and the quiet pond. But you have no choice, the chilling air seeped into your bones, and the sense of hunger dulled your alertness. You decide to head into the house. That was where the story ended. With a flash, when Feng Bujue opened his eyes, he was already standing inside the home. It appeared to be the living room. It was large and spacious. The floor was made from wood, and the furniture and decoration seemed to come straight from the 19th century. The chandelier above them and the wall sconces had electricity, but curiously enough, other than those lightings, there was no trace of other electronic device. Across from the living room was a flight of stairs about 2 meters wide, and it led up to the second floor. There were 4 doors around them, and a passageway behind the stairs. Due to the lack of lighting in the passageway, one could not see where it led from where they were standing. Feng Bujue took several seconds to observe his surroundings, before his eyes landed on the 3 other players, also standing in the living room. First was a male player. His IGN was Invincible Champion, and only had a small difference to the player Fearless Champion, who was the first to reach level 20. However, he was still a distance away from level 20. Currently only level 15. His title was Reckless Boxer. From his appearance, he was the same type as Long Almin, but compared to Brother Long's Schwarzenegger-type physique, he was quite lacking, be it in terms of height, muscles, or presence. The other 2 players were both female. They seemed to be in the same group before joining the queue, because they stood close to one another. One could also get some hint from the names. One was Passing Rain, the other Laughing Soul, and they were both level 13. Passing Rain appeared to be just over 20, and her hair was cut short until it barely reached the back of her neck. But strangely enough, even though she looked pretty, there was nothing outwardly grabbing about her. Appearance. Technically speaking, with the facial editing feature provided by the gaming hub, everyone could become the greatest beauty. There was no problem with changing a man's face into a woman's. The fact that a female player did not improve her looks to the maximum in this game was like her going out without putting makeup on. Or was it because the girl looked extremely weird in real life, and this was already the best the system could do? When Feng Bujue studied her, the girl's eyes met his. Oftentimes, a person's first impression was decided by one's gaze. At first glance, if there was anything one could get from Feng Bujue's eyes, it was serenity, and Feng Bujue read something similar to murderous aura in the girl's eyes, one that was cold and sharp. This was not because she was glaring at him, or she was pretending to be chill. It was something that radiated even on a normal basis. This was a look that was only possible for someone who was used to killing in real life. Moving his eyes upward, Feng Bujue saw Passing Rain's title, Heartless Decapitator. Then, he grumbled internally, what the F***ck is going on? A special agent playing the game to train her guts. Laughing Soul appeared much more normal. She looked 1 or 2 years younger than Passing Rain. She had a small face and long hair with no bangs to cover up her cute features. A slight smile hung on her face, but there was no humor in her eyes. Laughing Soul's title was Smart Gunslinger. If there was no surprise, she should excel at shooting guns. What's up with you? Passing Rain suddenly opened her lips. Her eyes were targeted at Feng Bujue. Her expression was cold and her words sharp. Feng Bujue understood that she was asking why he was staring at her. He flashed a smile and started to greet her. It's nothing. I was just surprised by the titles that the two of you have. Passing Rain decided to answer by not answering. It was as if she had heard something that was not worth her time, and this placed Feng Bujue in an awkward position. Laughing Soul saw this and chuckled to ease the tension. It's the same for you guys, you have interesting titles as well. She knew that her cousin was a reticent person, so she offered something to save Feng Bujue's face. A little exposition about these two. Passing Rain's grandfather's sister was Laughing Soul's grandmother. Basically, they were relatives. Actually, they were of the same age, both 22. Passing Rain had never liked to speak, but that did not mean that she was a pushover. She had never lost in a fight, even against men. That was how cool she was. Laughing Soul was like a child that would not grow up. She was a prankster and always had a joke to tell. Plus, in terms of IQ, she might even be brighter than Feng Bujue, although she did not have his weird habits like compulsive reading and analyzing. Why so many details about those two girls? Of course, that was because they will become main characters. Given that it's chapter 34, it's about time for the main female characters to show up, right? Or did you expect the system to suddenly turn into a woman and fall in love with the main character? If that's case, this might be the wrong story for you. Thank you. Feng Bujue accepted the kindness and turned to face Invincible Champion. Brother Invincible, are you related to that fearless champion? We are from the same studio, the man said curtly. I don't have time to entertain any other questions. I'm almost up to here with questions from you filthy casuals. He placed his hand next to his head, and his tone was dripping with condescension when he said those words. Oh, so we have a professional player among us. This is an honor. Feng Bujue used a tone dripping with deeper sarcasm to extend his praise. The man responded with a scoff and turned his face away with his nose turned up. If not for the system, he probably would have started to curse. Suddenly, the system shattered the oppressive atmosphere. The main quest has been triggered. Chapter 35: The Mountain Pool, and the Haunted Mansion 2. Then the quest tab changed. Explore the house to find a way to escape it. After reading that, Feng Bujue turned around without a second word to try to open the door. This was a French door that had wooden paneling. Feng Bujue grabbed the two doorknobs and twisted them until they made a tingling sound. Naturally, the door was locked, and it would not open so easily. Invincible Champion huffed patronizingly. Plebs will always be plebs. Only plebs would expect the door to open like that. Creak, creak. Wang Tanji joined Feng Bujue. He used the chef knife and wiggled at the space between the paneling while his other hand worked with the doorknob. He used his action to show support for Feng Bujue. Invincible Champion started to groan again. Hey, the little brother that has panicked in his title, are you deaf? I already said. Quong, quong, quong. The two made it worse. Each pulled on the door and yanked it with all their might. Are you too mad? Brother Invincible was running out of words to insult them. Pa. Pa. 2 crisp sounds later, the 2 doorknobs were yanked off their frames. Well, even if they had the keys now, they would not be able to escape that way. Hey! What are you doing? Invincible Champion gasped, and for that 1 second, his terror points rose for some weird reason. Bang, bang, bang. Then they used their shoulders to ram into the door that had lost its doorknobs. Finally, 2 minutes of madness later, Feng Bujue turned around, fixed his collar, and cleared his throat. Looks like this door really can't be opened. Mother ***. Invincible Champion cursed internally, but he could not curse in-game, so he could only roar angrily, didn't I tell you that from the beginning? Action speaks louder than words, Feng Bujue replied. I'm just using my actions to prove the validity of your words. Then, why don't you prove if there is a punishment for random quitting and abandoning the team? Invincible Champion challenged. So, it's some kind of supernatural power that blocks the door, huh? Feng Bujue scratched his chin and said something obvious. So, now you chose to ignore me. The fury in Brother Invincible's heart continued to rise. Passing Rain stood to the side and watched for a while before turning wordlessly to the darkened passageway on the first floor. Since someone had already proven that the door was not passable, there was no reason for her to stay and watch that tragedy. Laughing Soul followed and left the living room with the other girl. Seeing the two walk away, Long Almin hesitated. Brother Invincible, who was angry, finally noted their movement, and he shouted in their direction, Hey, don't wander off like that. If you trigger something, it's fine. Feng Bujue suddenly interrupted the man. From the content of the quest, the more things that are triggered, the better. As he said that, he walked to a glass window next to the door. The door was rectangular, 1 meter tall and 30 centimeters wide. The window had a tapered top, and the frame was made from wood. Looking outside, the other side of the window was covered by a layer of fog, and nothing could be seen. Feng Bujue took out his wrench and whacked it against the window. When the heavy metal fell on the window, Feng Bujue felt his arm shudder like the wrench had fallen on something metallic instead of something fragile. Like glass. This window is similar to the door. There is some kind of mysterious power protecting it on the surface, Feng Bujue concluded. Invincible Champion shook his head and sighed. I should have known casuals would not have common knowledge. Why would the system create a scenario that can be solved so early with brute force? He turned and walked up the stairs. The 3 of you are together, right? Please don't follow me. Bringing 3 plebs with me is most definitely a tragedy. You might cause me to fail. So, you 3 handle the first floor, and I alone will check out the second floor. Invincible Champion had already categorized the three as extremely useless teammates. Other than Long Aomin, who had the title Team Defender and seemed like he was fairly useful, the other two were extremely useless. The panicked hidden assailant, from the title, had to be a complete tool. While the meaning of the title of Cold-Blooded Skullcracker was an unknown, his attitude annoyed Invincible Champion, and he had committed many brainless actions. The most brainless action he did was to ask him about Fearless Champion. Those who did not understand the work of a gaming studio liked to ask such pointless questions. Actually, in Regulation Studio, a quick rise in terms of level did not mean much. It was merely a different delegation of work. Professional gamer was a valid career in 2055. Among the career paths, the most abundant was the small-size gaming studios. They saw themselves as professional, but their planning and administrative power were extremely lacking. Normally, the boss would also be the manager, accountant, and lead gamer. Most of the time, the boss would also have the heart of a gamer, and thus be prone to using company resources to benefit themselves, like using group resources to gain some fame in the virtual game. Such studios were like mushrooms after the rain. It was a common affair for them to come and leave, and their income was very unstable. Such teams formed the foundation of this career. Moving upward, at the middle section of this career, most of them were small to middle size, but they had a certain degree of management efficiency and quality control. The difference between these studios and the lower groups was that these studios often had one or two celebrity players, meaning expert players in a certain field. For studios that focused on competitive games, sometimes one or two such celebrity players would be able to support the whole studio. But for most studios at this stage, they had moved away from the everyman-for-himself type of management, and were able to effectively make use of the various resources available. To be frank, no matter the field, if one wanted to have a long career, then one had to plan for it. A gaming team without a plan was no different from a gathering of random players. They merely had more time to dedicate to gaming. At the top of the pyramid were top studios like Regulation. They had professional teams to manage the logistic, and the gamers were split into groups to complete their missions. In the 6-member group that was responsible to rush their level, each of them had a specific mastery and role to play. The item resources and information were provided by the studio in real life, and all the equipment and skill cards collected by the members were given to the level rush group first. Even an isolated member like Invincible Champion had his own role. Actually, his level was not that important. His main mission was to increase his fighting mastery and collect information. He could have skipped the other masteries, and it would not have mattered. The same went for equipment, as the studio would provide him with those later. For the time being, all Regulation wanted was first-hand information, and Invincible's responsibility was to test out the actual effects of someone who focused on mastering fighting. Therefore, whenever a stranger asked Invincible Champion about the studio, his feelings could be summarized in a single word: annoyed. Firstly, that was confidential business information, so he could not talk about it, and secondly, even if he could, he had no interest sharing it with others. Okay, but Brother Invincible, you'd better be careful since you're alone, Feng Bujue said with a peaceful smile. After hearing that, Invincible Champion shivered. A curious feeling made his terror points jump, like Feng Bujue's words were an omen that something bad was about to happen. He turned back to peer at the three in the living room. He turned back upstairs and tossed the thought out of his mind. Seeing his shadow disappear around the corner of the second floor, Long Aomin asked, "Brother Feng, why did you put on such an act? You have to understand how the system works by now. Obviously, there is no chance that we can escape from the door and windows. Even if you wanted to test that out, there was no need to make such a big commotion out of it, right? Only then will he be able to think we don't know anything, Feng Bujue answered. Then he'll make the reaction that he just did, abandoning us dead weights and moving away on his own. Brother Ju, you're not planning to do something bad, right? This game bans players from attacking one's allies, Wang Tanji said. He had helped Feng Bujue earlier not because he was cooperating with him but because he really thought the door could be opened. I'm not going to harm him, I just thought it is more effective for us to split up for a scenario like this, Feng Bujue explained. At least the two girls shared the same idea and walked off on their own, but that fella is most likely not someone who would discuss the plan with us. From his perspective, he has the highest level, and he is the most professional. Therefore, it's natural for him to think he's the leader. If I suggested for us to split up, there was an 80% chance he would deny the idea. When I pulled on the door, he even tried to stop the two girls from leaving, so you can see from that, he was planning for us to move together in a group. Feng Bujue walked over to Wall and squatted down like he was observing something. But this is for the best, he has wandered off on his own. He used his palm to remove the layer of dust and spider web on the wall. We should split up as well. When the main quest is updated, we'll come back here to meet up. Xiao Tan was shocked. We are going to split up as well. As I mentioned earlier, it's more effective this way, Feng Bujue answered without taking his eyes off the wall. Don't worry, this kind of place usually has a haunted setting, so the main purpose of the scenario is to scare people and set up puzzles. The only way you might get hurt is from traps, so just be careful when you're exploring. Before he finished, the system audio said, side quest triggered. The three looked at the quest tab. The original main quest was still there, but below it was a new quest. Find all 6 parts of the haunted palace. Current progress, 1/6. Chapter 36 The Mountain Pool, and the Haunted Mansion 3. What does that mean? What is this haunted palace? Wang Tanji asked. Your next question is going to be, can you eat it, right? Feng Bujue asked. I've already passed the age where people will find me cute for asking question like that. Plus, I'm being very serious, okay? Wang Tanji argued. Well, take a look for yourself. Feng Bujue stood up, allowing Xiao Tan and Brother Long to see what he had been inspecting earlier. When the two leaned closer, they discovered handwriting on the wall. It seemed to be carved with some kind of knife, and the words were all in English, but the players could open their menu to see the translation. It seemed to be an English couplet that read, In the greenest of our valleys, by good angels tenanted, once a fair and stately palace, radiant palace reared its head, in the monarch thought's dominion. It stood there. Never seraph spread opinion over fabric half so fair. What is the meaning of this? Wang Tanji was befuddled by the poem. This is probably an article called The Haunted Palace, and there are 6 stanzas in total. Long Almin made a guess. Both believed that, since Feng Bujue was with them, they could just ask him after all, the man seemed to know everything. However, when they turned around, they discovered that the man had gone missing. Brother Ju. Wang Tanji looked around and took one step back to look up the stairs to the 2nd floor. Where is he? He slipped away when we weren't looking. Long Almin looked around, and he could not see the man either. In the end, he could only shrug and sigh. He mentioned the benefit of splitting up earlier, so he must have slunk away when we were studying this poem. Then, let us go and look for some clues as well, Wang Tanji said. After all, Brother Ju did say that we will meet up here again after the main quest is updated. Long Almin nodded before starting to explore the 1st floor separately. They opened all the doors that could be opened, paying attention to clues or other stanzas of the haunted palace. Inside the complicated corridor of the first floor, two female players moved forward cautiously. From the looks of it, they had already run into things like traps. Passing Rain had a glinting sword in her hands. Even though the item was only of normal quality, she managed to use this simple weapon to earn the title Heartless Decapitator. This went to show how good she was. Laughing Soul did not arm herself. Her conclusion was similar to Feng Bujue's. If this scenario featured mostly ghosts and traps, so there was no reason to use her guns. Laughing Soul, who walked at the back, suddenly stopped and said after a few seconds, Seems like they've triggered a side quest. Passing Rain looked at the quest details and asked, should we cooperate to find this haunted palace then? There's no need for us to specifically do that, Laughing Soul answered after thinking about it. For now, we have no idea what that is, and furthermore, haven't we been looking for clues all this time? Okay, then. Let's continue, Passing Rain said before resuming their exploration. On the second floor, Invincible Champion was standing inside a very large room. Similar to the living room, the windows in this room were long and narrow, and they were placed high up on the wall, a distance away from the dark rubber tree wooden floor. A reddish glow filtered through the window, and it landed on the more conspicuous things in the room, but the question was, on such a dark night, what could be giving off this red glow? Outside the window, Invincible Champion had trouble peering into the further corners of the room, or the carved paneling on the edges of the walls even with his good eyesight. Of course, these details mattered not to the man. After all, what was the point even if he had a good look? The only information that he needed was whether or not there were monsters hiding in the room. Flowing curtains draped on the walls and the furniture had seen better days. They were old and decrepit, looking exceptionally uncomfortable. The books and musical instruments that littered the ground did not help to improve the liveliness of the room. A scent of melancholy hung in the air, and the chilly atmosphere seemed to seep into every corner. After hearing the system audio, Invincible Champion glanced at the menu. His first thought was that the two female players had found something in the house, and thus triggered the side quest. He did not even consider that it could have been the three plebs who were behind this. Even though he was not good at puzzle solving, Invincible Champion was a professional gamer. He might be lacking in analytical skills, but it could be made up through gaming experience. He roughly rummaged through the room to look for equipment or consumables, but the only things that appeared barely useful were a wooden guitar and a violin with broken strings. His bare hands were more effective than those fragile wooden objects. His title, the Reckless Boxer, provided the passive effect of improving the damage of his punches. Giving up on the equipment, Invincible Champion started to look for quest items. He had no idea what the haunted palace was and had no interest in reading through the books that littered the ground. He walked directly toward the object that looked like a clue the most, an envelope on the table. The other readable items in the room were either on the ground or piled in the corner. The only exception was this envelope, which was placed under an inkwell. Taking up the inkwell, Invincible Champion noticed that some ink had leaked out of the bottle, staining the envelope. But the stain was dry. He picked up the envelope and blew off the layer of dust before opening it and retrieving the letter inside. The letter was incomplete because many places were blotted out by the leaked ink, and the other places had gone blurry from time. The beginning of the letter and the writer's signature were both unreadable, but from the content, he speculated that the letter was written by the owner of the house to his friend. The writer said that he suffered from a serious illness due to some kind of curse, and he was tormented by the illusions. He desperately wished to see his best friend, his only friend. He wished that this friend could come visit him, and perhaps this might improve his condition. There were indeed signs of mental instability in the words, but most of the content was incomprehensible due to the writer's shaking hands and inscrutable sentence structure. Even though Invincible Champion was none the wiser after reading the letter, he carried the letter with him. He scanned the room one last time before turning to leave. Inside a darkened stone tunnel, a flashlight suddenly came on to shower its light on the short path before the man. Feng Bujue looked at his surroundings and started to mumble, "There are serious issues with this house. What is this? Castlevania? There is spatial incongruity, and now there's even hidden passageway. A few minutes ago, it had not been his intention to slither away from Xiao Tan and Brother Long. He had merely walked to the other side of the living room, because he wanted to take a closer look at the painting on the wall." Chapter 37 The Mountain Pool and the Haunted Mansion 4. There were several paintings hanging in the living room. Most of them appeared as if they were painted by madmen. The paintings were incredibly abstract and hard to understand, except for one. The painting showed the inside of a long, narrow tunnel. The walls were low, clean, and undecorated. The tunnel did not break off in the middle, and it seemed to lead down a declining slope. It looked like— no, it was a tomb. Some details in the paintings revealed that the tunnel was deep underground, and there was no exit in the painting or man-made lighting. The painter used some kind of strange styling to create an eerie and dangerous atmosphere via his brush strokes. Feng Bujue studied the painting for 5 seconds, like he was enraptured by it. A strange power held him in place, unable to speak or move. The next second, darkness fell over his eyes, and he could not see anything. After who knew how long, when he regained his mobility, he removed the flashlight from his backpack to take a look and realized that he was inside the tunnel in the painting. He did not understand how the process worked, and he had no idea whether Xiao Tan or Brother Long had noticed anything, but regardless, it seemed like he had to depend on himself to leave this place. Behind him was a stone wall. He pushed against it, and it did not budge. The ceiling was low, and there was no hatch through which he could escape. Feng Bujue sighed and took out Eyes of Hostility and put it on. With the flashlight in one hand and the wrench in the other, he trekked down the slope. Wearing the jazz shoes, Feng Bujue was not worried that he might run out of stamina points. Due to his exploration, he could walk as far as he wanted. With 1,100 stamina points and equipment that reduced stamina points consumption, he could have walked to the moon. Even if the place was as big as Castlevania, he was confident that he could explore the entire map. He walked down the path for about 10 minutes, when Feng Bujue's flashlight suddenly flickered. He shook it several times and slapped its body twice, thinking to himself, "Has the battery run out? That doesn't seem possible. I didn't use it that long during the previous scenario. Is it already broken? That's even less possible. It's made in China, and I have confidence in our country's products." Suddenly, a curious whisper came from the front. "Let me out." The voice came from around 10 meters in front of Feng Bujue. He moved his sight away from the flashlight and looked down the tunnel. Right then, the flashlight died, and everything descended into darkness. Then, the light flickered temporarily, and it captured a white shadow that was standing alone in the dark. From its shape, it appeared to be a woman. Her body was wounded, and her frame was slight. Her white clothes were covered with blood stains. Due to the brief appearance and the problem of lighting and distance, Feng Bujue could not see her face at all. The light disappeared, and Feng Bujue's world dropped into darkness again. However, that scary image was burned into his retina, and then following that was a desperate wail. "Let me out." The sound of flesh ramming against wood echoed in the darkness. There was the sound of friction, and the sound of chains rattling. Underneath all that, there was a voice that traveled from afar, like someone was howling in grief deep inside the dungeon. 30 seconds later, the flashlight returned to normal. It stopped flickering. After experiencing that, Feng Bujue's expression did not change. If anything, he sighed in relief. So, the flashlight is not broken. The flickering is due to the plot. Right then, the system audio said, "Side quest progress updated." Feng Bujue examined it, and the quest for finding all 6 parts of the haunted palace had increased to 2/6. Naturally, someone else had found the other stanza, but unfortunately, the detail of it was not provided in the Quest tab. At the same time, Wang Tanji and Long Aomin, who were on the first floor, squatted next to the kitchen oven, studying the second stanza of the haunted palace, which was written down using something akin to coal. Banners yellow, glorious, golden. On its roof did float and flow. All this, was in the olden time long ago. And every gentle air that dallied in that sweet day. Along the ramparts plumed and pallid, a winged odor went away. Ah! I don't understand it at all. The poem entered Wang Tanji's left ear and exited the right. He poked his head into the oven and looked up the chimney. He came out with a face blackened with soot and coughed. "It's too narrow, there's no way we can get through here." Initially, when Long Aomin did not respond to him, Wang Tanji did not think much of it. But several seconds later, when Wang Tanji turned around, he discovered that Long Aomin was acting strangely. His eyes were bulging as his lips opened and closed. It appeared as if he was shouting, but Xiao Tan did not hear anything. This made a chill run up Xiao Tan's spine, and then he immediately noticed something. The words that he tried to speak did not come out of his throat. The scenario was scary for those involved, but it was quite a funny scene for those observing. 2 men, who did not understand sign language, were gesticulating wildly, complete with deep expressions and moving lips. In the end, neither of them understood what the other was saying. The most suitable things to say might have been, "Are you sick? Do you have any medicine? How much do you have? How much do you normally eat? Eat as much as you have. Have you lost your mind?" But in reality, that was not what they said. "What's going on?" Wang Tanji tried to ask. "What you talking about? What is the meaning of your hand gestures? It's the dark layer on your face that's behind this." Long Aomin attempted to tell him. From Long Aomin's perspective, things were quite clear. The coal on Wang Tanji's face was like a living mask, and it was showing a weird smile. The expression of this black face was not related to Xiao Tan himself, it seemed more like a face that was floating on Xiao Tan's own face. In the end, Long Aomin came up with an idea. He found a cloth in the dirty kitchen, and held it before his face. He moved the cloth around in a clockwise manner, and then used his finger to point at the cloth and then at Xiao Tan's face. The latter finally got it. He grabbed the cloth and rubbed his face as fast as he could. When he removed the cloth, the two regained their power of speech. My God! What kind of monster was that? Wang Tanji looked at the cloth in his hand. The black face appeared to be printed on the cloth, retaining its shape as it transferred from Xiao Tan's face to the cloth. By then, Xiao Tan's face was clean, without a bit of dust. Even though I have no idea why the system came up with something like that. Long Aomin realized that this thing would not cause any physical harm, and was not particularly scary. Other than pranking the players, he really could not come up with any purpose for it. But I think it's safer for us to burn it. Long Aomin grabbed the cloth and found 2 flints resting next to the oven. Chapter 38: The Mountain Pool and the Haunted Mansion 5. Feng Bujue continued to move forward. The scary encounter from before did not affect him at all. He powered on like usual, feeling no extra pressure. It did not take him long to reach the end of the tunnel, to a cramped and Damp underground cellar. There was a jail door inside the cellar, which was nothing surprising. In olden times, the cellars of these types of large houses were normally used as a jail, and now it was used as a place to store a coffin before its burial. The floor and walls were carefully covered with a copper layer. The iron jail door was surprisingly heavy. As it swung open, the chain would create a sharp creaking sound. There was a coffin sitting in the middle of the room. Standing a few steps away from it, he shone his flashlight on it. The coffin lid was not nailed shut. In fact, the coffin was not even fully closed. Feng Bujue walked through the door, but he did not hurry to open the coffin. Instead, he used his flashlight to shine around the room. He did come up with something. On one of the walls, he found another stanza to the haunted palace, and this time, it was written in blood. But evil things, in robes of sorrow, assailed the monarch's high estate. Ah, let us mourn, for never morrow shall dawn upon him, desolate. And round about his home, the glory that blushed and bloomed is but a dim-remembered story of the old time entombed. It's the fifth stanza, it seems, Feng Bujue mumbled after reading it. The system audio came soon after, side quest updated. And the quest detail became find all six the haunted palace. Current progress, 3/6. Feng Bujue walked over to the coffin. Holding the flashlight in one hand and his other gripping into a fist, like knocking on a door, he tapped on the coffin lid 3 times. Hey, Miss Madeline, are you there? It was unclear where the man had gotten that name. As time moved on, Invincible Champion's terror points grew to 15% and stabilized around that number. The reason for his panic was not because he ran into an actual monster, but because, after searching around for a while, he could not find a way to leave the second floor. Each corridor, each room, the paintings, lamps, and decorations looked so unfamiliar yet familiar at the same time. The building showed spatial anomalies because it was much bigger inside compared to how it looked from the outside. The length of the corridor seemed to change at any minute as well. When he went down the corridor, counting the number of the doors, he would get a different result every time. So far, Invincible Champion had not reached the end of any corridors. Whenever he thought that he had reached the end, there would be a new corner or a junction. The exhaustion to stamina points when walking was negligible. Only when the player was walking for a long time would the deduction be noticeable. This was different from real life. If you had someone walk barefooted for just 20 minutes, he would feel tired already, 40 minutes, and his legs would feel pain, more than 1 hour, and he would have to pause and rest. Of course, in this case, the person used as an example was a normal man, not a professional athlete. This kind of tiredness was accumulative, and the longer it gathered, the more obvious it became. Corroded by fear, the reaction became conspicuous in Invincible Champion. When he saw his stamina points lowering at an observable speed, he did not stop to think calmly, but chose to increase his speed. He was not exploring but running. There was a feeling that if he did not do something soon, he would not only be trapped there, but also once his stamina had lowered to a certain point, something in the dark would catch up to him. Her. Invincible Champion's breathing became heavy. He looked at the game menu. He still had 1,000 stamina points, and he was not running but speed walking. His body should not have reacted that way. He stopped moving and placed his hands on his knees to stop the heavy breathing. He swallowed. At that moment, he suddenly realized that there was something off with his stomach, but he had a hard time telling what it was. What's going on? Invincible Champion mumbled softly to himself. Having a monologue could help lower the sense of fear and help one to focus. Suddenly, he he caught something out of the corner of his eye. He turned around and was shocked to realize that there was a mirror next to him, a rectangular mirror that was 2 meters tall and embedded into the wall. The mirror had a carved wooden frame, which was simple but exquisite. "This is weird. Was this thing here earlier?" He could not help but ask, and confusion colored his face. By then, Invincible Champion had been focusing his eyes on the way forward, his eyes targeting the end of the corridor. He stopped counting the doors on the side and naturally would not pay attention to decorations like paintings, lamps, and statues. But the corridor he was in was not wide, and this was the first time that something like a mirror had shown up, a large one at that. There was no reason for him to miss it. When Invincible Champion noticed the mirror, he was facing it from his side. Currently, he was bent over with his hands on his knees. However, once he shifted his focus to the mirror, he stood up straight and turned to face it. Once he did, he also collapsed from the shock. The reflection in the mirror looked like the real Invincible Champion, but the reflection had his stomach exposed to the wind. There was no shirt or skin covering that part of his body, and he saw a mess of intestines instead. Invincible Champion sucked in a cold breath, and his face was blanched. He staggered backward, and his back knocked into the other wall. His eyes widened, and his breath stopped for almost 10 seconds. This has to be an illusion. After he regained some semblance of calmness, he gritted his teeth and walked back to stand before the window. Who is it trying to scare? It's just an X-ray, so to speak. Even though he said that, the terror points would not lie. He was still afraid, but people reacted differently to fear, and one such reaction was anger. Invincible Champion's gaze moved involuntarily to his stomach. He could see that his intestines were moving, but once he looked closer, he caught some strange details. The more he looked at those intestines, the stranger he felt. They looked like many intersecting corridors. His neck was frozen solid, and 2 seconds later, he howled angrily as a kick landed on the mirror, shattering it into pieces. Then, he turned and walked away. But once he turned around, he was greeted by many identical mirrors down the corridor. All the room doors had disappeared, and in their places were the mirrors. Brother Invincible screamed and blindly charged forward. He had no idea whether he was hallucinating or had triggered an actual change to the house, but the fear and danger that he felt were real. He did not want to stay inside this corridor 1 second longer. With a crash, a human shape broke through the glass window and careened down from the 2nd floor of the building. The moment he tumbled through the wind, Invincible Champion was fully unprepared. 1 second earlier, he had still been running down the corridor. He remembered that the road ahead was still long, but the next second came the acute pain of glass shards cutting through his skin. He rammed through something, and the next thing he knew, the ground underneath his feet disappeared. The short second before death claimed him, he caught sight of the house from outside. Moss grew all over the stone walls, the dead trees that surrounded the house, and the large and rippling black reflection in the water. The air of danger and death seeped out of the water, walls, and deep within the house. Darkness consumed the space between the material and spirit worlds. In the shapeless silence, the champion fell into the pond by the house. The heavy water swallowed him fully. Air bubbles escaped from his throat, but it nary made a ripple. The large house was like a silent observer, spectating the loss of another young life. The last thing that was reflected in the eyes of this professional player was the blood moon that was wearily sinking behind the horizon. Team message: Invincible Champion has died. A plot item has been transferred. When the system audio appeared, both Wang Tanji and Long Aomin were stunned. What the hell? A level 15 professional player died just like that. Wang Tanji gasped. He opened the game menu to double-check the information. As the system stated, the player name for Invincible Champion was grayed out, and the original surviving status had changed to dead. By then, the two had looked through many rooms, but they could not find any concrete evidence. Other than the few times when they came across weak points in the floor and traps, they had nothing. If we split up, we would have died from the traps that we encountered, Long Almin said before adding, I wonder if Brother Feng will run into any danger since he's working alone. If it's Brother Ju, you don't need to worry. Since he suggested we split up, he will have considered the risk already, Wang Tanji said. By the way, I glanced through the game manual when I was waiting for Brother Ju to come online, and it said that should a player die in game, then the items that he possessed will randomly appear next to one of his teammates. Long Almin had some experience in team mode, so he concurred. Yes, I know that. Let's look around us then. The two started searching, but although they did not find the letter, they did find a new stanza of the poem on the floor, covered by a pile of trash. Wanderers in that happy valley, through two luminous windows, saw spirits moving musically to a lute's well-tuned law. Round about a throne where, sitting, Porphyrogene, in state his glory well befitting, the ruler of the realm was seen. Side quest updated. Find all 6 the haunted palace. Current progress, 4/6. Chapter 39 The Mountain Pool, and the Haunted Mansion 6. The dining room was large, and a long table sat in the middle. It was so long that the people, who sat at opposite ends, needed to scream to hear each other. On top of the white tablecloth, it was dotted with several empty plates and utensils, as well as 4 candelabras that had toppled over. There was a chandelier right above the dining table, and it was even larger than the one in the living room. However, it did not seem to be working. The light in the room came instead from the lamps on the wall. The wooden chairs were a mess, and a few were even lying on the ground. Some of them had not been moved for so long that there were spider webs attached to them. When Passing Rain heard the system announcement, she paused for just a second before continuing her search, the expression on her face still as cold as snow. It was Laughing Soul who first chuckled and said, that big brother, who looked quite formidable, is dead. Formidable? Passing Rain asked. From where did you see that? Well, his level is high, and he's a professional player, Laughing Soul answered. Passing Rain used her sword to lift a part of the tablecloth. She answered without stopping her investigation, our level will continue to rise, and we too can call ourselves professional players. Cousin, you're purposely bickering with me again. Laughing Soul rolled her eyes at Passing Rain and grumbled, are you sure we can be so calm when the professional player is dead? Then, Passing Rain removed a letter from underneath the table. She said matter-of-factly, plot item. Item name, ink-stained letter. Effect, unknown. Remark, parts of the letter are blotted with ink stains, making it not fully comprehensible. She handed the letter over to Laughing Soul and said, I doubt this thing has been lying underneath the table all this while. I believe it was placed here after the death of that invincible champion. Laughing Soul accepted the letter and opened it to read. Then she quickly placed it into her backpack. She licked her lips. If this letter is one of the important items to solve the main quest, then there is one possibility where the people who possess the letter will be assaulted by the mysterious power within the house, placing them in a dangerous spot, so that is why the professional player is dead. Passing Rain continued. But it's strange, Laughing Soul argued. There are 4 of them, so why only one of them is dead? And it is the strongest among them. Unless there's no need to guess. Feng Bujue's voice suddenly appeared, and he walked through the door. Obviously, we split up. Laughing Soul and Passing Rain turned their heads to look at him, and Feng Bujue said, and from the fact that he was the first to die, we have to seriously question if he's the strongest among us. But his level is higher than you, and he's a professional player, Passing Rain told Feng Bujue, using the words that were used to convince her earlier. But our level will increase, and we can call ourselves professional players too. Does that make us strong players as well? Feng Bujue retorted with a smile. Laughing smile smothered the laughter with her hand over her lips. Passing Rain's expression shifted slightly. How long have you been here? Just arrived, what's wrong? Feng Bujue answered. He really did not overhear the two girls' conversation earlier, he only heard the last sentence Laughing Soul said. Passing Rain was silent for 2 seconds before asking. Are you the one who discovered the side quest for the haunted palace? Yes, Feng Bujue answered. I found the 1st and 5th stanzas. Are you the ones who found the other 2 stanzas? Laughing Soul shook her head. No, but we did find plenty of traps along the way. What exactly is this, the haunted palace? Passing Rain added. Is it a book or some kind of object? It's a poem. Wang Tanji also appeared at the door, and trailing behind him was Long Aomin. Your timing is perfect, Feng Bujue said. Which stanzas have you found? The good news is, we've found 2 of them, Long Aomin said. The bad news is, we cannot memorize them. Wang Tanji did not look a bit ashamed. In fact, he looked quite proud of that fact. Try to recite the key points, Feng Bujue urged. The 2 combined their memories and forced out as many terms as they could remember. After hearing that, Feng Bujue said, that should be the 2nd and 3rd stanzas. Then he did something shocking. He recited the 2 stanzas that Xiao Tan and Brother Long had found perfectly, without missing a word, and asked them whether he was correct or not. Brother Ju, what's going on? Wang Tanji gasped. Have you been following us? This house is formed by the memory I have in real life. Actually, I am a serial killer and this is one of my hideouts, Feng Bujue said nonchalantly. The haunted palace that you saw is something that I wrote on the walls. Out of boredom. Wang Tanji's jaw dropped, and he looked at Feng Bujue with a shocked look, his mind a complete mess. 10 seconds later, Feng Bujue told him, you know, you're the only one who doesn't realize I'm kidding. Ha ha ha. Long Aomin suddenly burst out laughing. He was quick to understand that this was a joke from Feng Bujue, but he did not think it was that funny. However, he was tickled by Wang Tanji's gullibility. Mr. Feng, is it? The time for jokes is over, can you tell us the actual reason already? Laughing Soul said. You not only knew about the arrangement of those stanzas, and even managed to recite them perfectly. Then, you have to know about the origin of this haunted palace, yes. This short poem came from Edgar Allan Poe's The Fall of the House of Usher, Feng Bujue answered. I believe this scenario is derived from that as well. He moved a chair over to sit down. Have any of you read it before? No. Other than Passing Rain, the other 3 answered his question in unison like kids in class. You're not missing out, his works are not that interesting, Feng Bujue said. Poe is a poser, a fan of gambling and alcohol. His life was stained by the marks of many women. He focused his life on writing, but most of his novels only paid attention to atmosphere and ignored the plot. Sometimes, he resorted to dubious means to complete his work. For example, at the start of Ligeia, he copied a long paragraph and added a dash and said that it was a statement made by Joseph Glanville. If there was a search engine in the 19th century, the man would have been dragged out to the street by his critics already. Sounds like you're a big fan, Passing Rain said coldly. Sounds like someone's jealous. Laughing Soul tossed him a condescending look. The more you describe him, the more it sounds like you, Wang Tanji said. Brother Feng, take care of yourself. Long Almin did not know what to say, so he chose to advise the man. Feng Bujue stood up and continued to argue his case without a change to his expression. I'm not his fan. I just happen to know a thing or two about the man. You can even memorize his poem. Please don't try to argue anymore, Passing Rain interrupted him. Big sister. Feng Bujue began. How old do you think I am to be calling me your big sister? Little girl. Say that again if you dare. Feng Bujue took a deep breath. Beautiful lady. Actually, I am merely a studious person. Mr. Feng, you really don't need to explain yourself to me. An indiscernible smile appeared on Passing Rain's lips. Feng Bujue was stunned. For 3 seconds before turning around like nothing was out of the ordinary. The wind tonight sure is loud. Even Long Almin felt embarrassed for him. Brother Feng, don't mind it even if you're exposed. We should focus on looking for clues. Feng Bujue almost coughed out blood, thinking to himself, you should have just said the last sentence. Is there a point to you saying the first sentence other than to poke at my wound? By the way, I was meaning to ask, don't you think there's something strange at work here? Feng Bujue asked solemnly. Why are we all gathered here? The layout of this house shifts, and the fact that we are gathered together, does this mean? Before he finished, there was a loud bang, and the only door leading to the kitchen closed on its own. Chapter 40 The Mountain Pool and the Haunted Mansion 7. 10 minutes prior, when Invincible Champion was still alive, Feng Bujue was inside the cellar. Feng Bujue knocked on the coffin lid and said teasingly, Hey, Miss Madeline, are you there? He did not expect a reply to come from inside the coffin because he knew that the coffin was supposed to be empty. After finding the first stanza of the Haunted Palace, Feng Bujue had begun to suspect that the house was inspired by the House of Usher in the short story. When he arrived at the cellar and saw the coffin and the fifth stanza on the wall, his suspicion was confirmed. Feng Bujue read many books, but that did not mean that he had a photographic memory. Other than the memories that were pushed out of his mind as trash, for the rest, like stories that he had once read, he could recover around 70% of the memory. To have the man stand there and recite all 6 stanzas of the haunted house from pure memory was impossible. Therefore, he needed Xiao Tan and Brother Long to issue some words to jog his memory before the other 2 stanzas become more clarified in his mind. Of course, Feng Bujue could remember the general plot of the short story quite clearly. Many people knew of the name Edgar Allan Poe. He was the founder of detective novels. His The Murders in the Rue Morgue was deemed as the first actual detective novel in modern literature, and he was the man who popularized the term detective novel when he published the story. But that was 1841, and The Fall of the House of Usher was written before that. It was a gothic thriller story, and the whole passage was steeped in a dark, scary atmosphere. The summary of the story was as well. It detailed the story of the main character's dead friend, Roderick Usher. Roderick's family suffered from a mysterious hereditary disease. The house that he lived in seemed to be tainted by some kind of weird curse as well. Over hundreds of years, the lineage of the Usher family had continued in spite of all these problems, passing from father to son. Soon, the original name of the house was forgotten, and the house itself was equated to the name of Usher. When people mentioned the House of Usher, they were referring to both the house and the family. One day, Roderick wrote a letter to the main character, saying that he was going to die soon. He was tormented by his illness, swaying between the physical and hallucinatory realms. The mysterious power within the House of Usher destroyed his rationality, draining him of his life. The main character came to visit his old friend, hoping that his visit would breathe some life into the ailing man. However, on the night of the main character's arrival, Roderick's little sister, Miss Madeline, died from an illness. She was the only family that Roderick had left in the world, his only companion for all these years. Miss Madeline had been sick from a young ages, and the doctors had announced that there was no treatment for the girl. However, she continued to fight the disease, spending most of her time in bed. The curious depression and collapse of Roderick's mental state was mostly due to her condition. Before Roderick died, he made a request. He wanted them to find a cellar to store his sister's body for 14 days. The main character personally helped to fulfill his friend's dying wish. He placed Miss Madeline inside the coffin and placed her down in the cellar, but no one knew that she was actually still alive. After 8 days, the distraught Roderick fell into madness. That night, the main character came across the scary-looking Miss Madeline roaming the house, and she scared her big brother to death before finally dying. After the main character escaped from the house of Usher, he saw the house crumble into the pond next to it with his own eyes. There were many unscientific plot points in the story. For example, how could no one realize that Madeline was still alive when she was placed inside the coffin? How could a woman who subsisted on nothing inside the coffin for 8 days have the energy to crawl back into the house? Why did the house collapse? Was it due to an earthquake or explosion? But the readers in the 19th century would not have had questions like that. It was not until the end of 20th century, when criticism became an actual professional career, especially in the field of literature where Poe's works were questioned. If Poe was alive in the 21st century, any professor who dared to call himself a critic would have some choice words for this famed author. Let's not dwell on this subject, it's about time we got back to the story. Based on the plot of the story, the coffin had to be empty. Whether the spirit that Feng Bujue saw in the tunnel was Madeline's spirit or not, her body was not going to be inside the cellar, but inside the house. Feng Bujue pushed open the coffin, and it was empty, devoid of a dead body. He waved away the dust that flew all over the place, and shone the flashlight inside the coffin. On the board inside the coffin near the head, he soon discovered that a small row of letters had been carved. It looked like it had slowly been gouged out using one's fingers. It read, "He knows," without any punctuation, and the letters were toppled all over. Placing himself in her shoes, there was no light inside the coffin, and Madeline would not have known whether her handwriting was neat or not. Furthermore, she had to maintain a fixed posture to carve those words, so the fact that it was legible was already a miracle. Hidden quest triggered. When Feng Bujue heard the system, he immediately opened the menu and saw a window floating at the forefront. The hidden quest in the scenario will provide you with considerable rewards, but the difficulty for discovering and completing the hidden quest will be much harder than the main and side quest. The system hints related to the hidden mission, including the voices and words in the game menu, are only viewable to the player who triggered the hidden quest. If the hidden quest is triggered within the company of many players, then all the present players will gain the update to said quest. But hidden quest cannot be shared. While the player with the hidden quest can share the information with other players, and the other players can obtain the quest details and progress in their menu, it will not be counted as accepting the quest, and they are unable to receive any rewards from completing the quest. Above is the information provided when the player triggers a hidden quest for the first time. If you have any more questions, feel free to look through the game manual. In other words, finders keepers, Feng Bujue murmured to himself. He closed the window and glanced at the quest. Rescue Miss Madeline's soul. Oh? What is this? He had a brief idea of the scenario and its plot, but the main problem was, how was he going to escape from this cellar? He raised the flashlight again, and made a closer investigation of his surroundings, but he found nothing. He turned his gaze back to the coffin. Other than the sentence and other scratch marks left on the wood, there was nothing worthwhile. Feng Bujue leaned the flashlight against the wall of the coffin, pointing the side that gave off the light upward. Then he bent down to pick up the heavy coffin lid and lean it against the wall. He looked on both of its sides, but there was nothing special about it. Wait a minute. Feng Bujue suddenly stopped moving and thought, the person inside the coffin should have been facing up, and technically speaking it is more convenient for the person to carve on the coffin lid. Even if she was worried that someone might overlook the carving on the lid, so she decided to carve it on the coffin itself. Why isn't there any sign of a struggle on this lid? There are signs of kicks and scratches on the coffin itself. But the coffin lid looks brand new. Feng Bujue grabbed the flashlight and shone it on the lid leaning against the wall. He squatted down and focused his sight on this wooden board. He knocked on it again. The lid produced a sturdy sound of wood. It did not sound like it was hollow. Then, Feng Bujue made a very daring decision. He raised the lid and slid it over the coffin, closing it 2/3 of the way. Then he climbed into the box. He used his hands to move the lid close from within. Lying inside, he did not feel that comfortable, not because of any psychological effect, but because the wooden boards were extremely hard. It felt like he was lying on top of a hard, wooden floor. Feng Bujue placed himself in the position of Miss Madeline. He shone the flashlight at the lid and then said, "How did you get out of here?" Then, he raised one of his hands to push at the lid. To his surprise, the lid would not budge. Oh! Feng Bujue was shocked. He placed the flashlight next to his head and used all his limbs to push. He even kicked at it several times, but the lid simply would not budge. After some struggling, just as he wanted to take a breather, on the coffin lid, the piece of wood that was facing him suddenly bulged forward and slowly morphed into the shape of a human face. The gender of the face was hard to tell, and its voice was like that of an old witch. It told Feng Bujue, "Dying man, do you want to leave here?" "Yes," Feng Bujue replied. He did want to see what kind of tricks this coffin monster could be up to. "What can you give me?" the coffin lid asked. Then the system audio sounded. "You can sacrifice a piece of equipment that is of normal quality, or higher, to have the monster teleport you out of the cellar." "Oh? So I can sacrifice, is it?" Feng Bujue thought. "In other words, I can choose not to sacrifice. That must be right. Because if the player doesn't have any appropriate equipment, then would they be trapped here forever? That doesn't seem likely. There has to be another exit." "Coffin, I have nothing to give you," Feng Bujue said. The face suddenly underwent a drastic change. The lips and eyes peeled open, and the face turned scary. If this was a normal person, they would have been scared, but in reality, it was merely a human face floating on a wooden board. It was unable to attack the people lying inside the coffin. At most, it could only scare them, which would not work on Feng Bujue. "Then you'll be trapped here forever, before wasting away in fear and hunger. Even when your nails are bloody from the scratches, even when your knees and ankles are cracked from the kicks, you'll never be able to." Feng Bujue removed the M1911A1 pistol from his backpack and switched the safety lock off. "Let me introduce you to a friend of mine." Feng Bujue aimed the barrel at the space between the face's brows. "It's a little thing that was made after the Second Industrial Revolution. The damage caused by the weapon in your hand is not enough for you to escape. 1 or 2 small wounds is nothing," the lid replied. "I know you can change and recover, but what about the coffin boards next to me, above my head, and underneath me?" Feng Bujue asked. The face on the lid laughed, and at the same time, the carved handwriting near Feng Bujue's head and the surrounding scratch marks disappeared. "What about them?" "Oh? So that's it. Since the quest has been received and the secret of the coffin has been discovered, the hints of the scratch marks can be removed, Feng Bujue said as he put the gun away. Now, have you changed your mind? The lid said again. You can give me the weapon you were holding earlier, and I'll let you out immediately. Feng Bujue pulled out the kitchen knife and Mario's wrench without stopping to take a breath. Now you have two choices. One is to teleport me back into the house and end this happy conversation. He raised his arm to left a deep cut on the coffin board. Or two, I will cut you up into pieces and feed you into the oven. Several seconds later, Feng Bujue successfully reappeared inside the house, but he was not back in the living room where he disappeared from but in a corridor. There was a painting on the wall next to him, but the painting was not of an underground tunnel, but a twisted and ugly human face. He did not stop to waste his time. He checked his life points, which were still full, and stamina points, which were high, and continued his exploration. Part 4 of the series ends here. If you enjoyed it, please give us a like and subscribe, so we can be motivated to make even better videos in the future.